This is Dan Henderson, and you're listening to Talkingbrawls.
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Loving life one day at a time.
Could you just explain to the guys what was it like in the early days under Bob Shamrock in the boys' house there, and what life was like?
Well, it was, like I said, I filled a lot of homes growing up. At 10 years old, I was in juvenile hall. I was living out of a car, got stabbed, ended up getting put into place and becoming a ward of the court. And I went through several different places and failed a lot of them, just getting in trouble, fighting and in trouble. And then I landed at a place called the Shamrock Boys Home in Susanville, California. And it was just different. It was the love that he showed to the boys there, and the structure that they had in the house. It wasn't like a number or a piece of meat. We were all individuals and human beings, and he cared for us as such. And so because of that, I was able to turn my life around because of his help and guiding me and helping me use his frustration into something positive, which at the time was sports.
Exactly. And how did you get into mixed martial arts? What was the ultimate reason why you got into the sport of mixed martial arts?
Well, early on, I wrestled in high school. I did very well there. I actually qualified for state, and I broke my neck my senior year, and so they had to do some fusion. A year later, I had lost all my scholarships to play football and wrestling after I broke my neck my senior year. Yeah. About a year and a half later, I ended up putting on about 20 pounds. I got stronger, and then I went and played football after I recovered from that. It was at Chester College. I was first-team All-American. We won our division, went to a bowl game. I was most valuable player. So I was very, very active and very talented in sports, and had a lot of opportunity to get involved with a lot of different things. And even like early on before I started fighting, I did pro wrestling. I rose to the top in like 3 different organizations that were smaller organizations, and then an opportunity to get into the UFC.
Going back to the earlier days, a little bit earlier on, the Lions then, when you set that up, I've talked to your brother Frank before in the past, and he said it was a really brutal place to train. Was it as brutal as people made it out to be? Obviously you experienced a lot more in the sport after those days. Is that fair to say that it was a brutal environment?
It was. It was kind of. I got it from Japan, kind of the concept, but they didn't live at houses. They lived actually in the dojo. I actually set up the housing and, basically brought that concept in where I trained fighters for a year. They would live, they would sleep, and they would eat and breathe training. Yeah. And what I could put on them in a year or even 6 months was what most people put on in 10 years of training. I had their complete focus, their complete, structure of their life to be able to just hone in on their skills. And it worked because everybody in the Lions didn't always every one of them that pretty much won their first fight. We had a 99% win ratio with everybody coming out of the Lions and fighting their first time. So the training worked. It was brutal. It had to be brutal because anything that you faced in training would be much easier than what you would face in the ring against another opponent, which gave you a huge advantage.
Definitely. And, I think you've mentioned this in the past that, Frank, you were particularly hard on because you wanted to see him succeed so much. Is that your way of showing love to the guys, and preparing them for, everyday fighting and everyday?
Well, you don't do that today. Now you see it's really, there's a lot of people that, and not all of them, some good guys in there, but a lot of people that get in there don't ever reach that level. They have all the skills in the world, but they don't have the work ethic. And you see them fall out. A lot of them fall out after, winning once or twice, or getting in there and the level of competition gets stiffer and they got to work harder, but they don't have that work ethic. And you see a lot of them fall aside. You don't see too many sustained champions. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the training. It becomes so easy to people, because now they can pay a membership or they can get into a gym and learn from a superstar. They don't have to earn it. They don't have to go in and earn it. They can come in and just do it. What we did was we made sure that whoever came into the Lions, especially during that time where it was bare knuckle and no rules, that you had to understand what you were getting into. So nobody came through those doors unless they passed a tryout. And that tryout was the worst thing they would ever go through in their entire life. And if they passed that, then I know that I could train them in this type of environment.
When we spoke to Frank, it said it was the most brutal thing he's ever experienced in his life. Do you believe, obviously, you've had a very fractious relationship with Frank? Do you believe the training in the gym possibly had something to do with that, or was Frank a little bit possibly bitter because of the beatings that you used to dish out upon him?
Oh no, I honestly think that it had nothing to do with the beatings, and it had nothing to do with the training. It had to do with him wanting to be his own person. He came in there, my dad adopted him, took him out of prison, gave him a life, and I took him into my home. He lived upstairs in my house. I gave him free training, but he had to earn it. He had to make the pass tryouts, and he did that. Yeah. And so I paid for everything. I even gave him a car. I gave him everything: training, place to stay, food, clothes. I did that for all the fighters. And for years, I bought in. And because I wanted to be able to give back of things that I had learned, but it wasn't going to come at a point to where people could use me. So they had to earn it. They had to be, some tough guys to get into the Lions Den. And so if they did that, then they had my respect. But that didn't mean that the training got any easier, because now we had to get in the ring and we had to fight. So now we were going to do more training in that instead of the fresh guys on them all the time, wearing them out, and basically put them to a point where they can't win. But when we started training, we put them in situations where they would learn to win.
Yeah. And do you feel as though, the relationship with Frank, because of, he sort of he went a bit of a liberal lifestyle. Do you think you base a lot of your training back in the early days on respect? Do you feel as though he disrespected you by, acting the way he did, later on in his career, and his disrespect towards Bob? Will you ever forgive him truly for that?
Well, there's always going to be a spot in there, because my dad did pass away, and Frank handled that very, very badly. So yeah, it is tough, but I believe that you have to forgive in order to move on. So I've got to find that place to be able to store that and forgive. So definitely. I'm working on it. It's there, but I still want to do it, because I think Frank's going to have his own time and his own place to have to deal with what he did. And it's going to be a lot worse on himself. He's going to be a lot worse on himself than I could be. So I need to get to a spot to where I can forgive him, and that we can move forward in our relationship.
Definitely. And we've seen the recent documentary with the two of you guys, trying to mend the bridges of the relationship. How has it progressed in the last number of months?
Well, we both have kind of, like I said, we're not fighting, so we're both trying to build another direction for our lives, because one, we didn't have the money that we needed to put away. It just is what it is. So we have to build different businesses. So we're real busy, and we do contact each other through Facebook or email, and occasionally we'll call. So hopefully somewhere in the future we'll get stable. He'll get a little stable, I'll get stable, and we'll be able to set some time aside where we could actually bring families together.
Is it fair to say you've both possibly mellowed in your older years, and that this is a reason that forgive and forget before it's too late?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the kind of guy, and I've always been that way. Look through my career, where I'm always ready to let go and let things be bygones, because I believe life's too short, and you hang on to those things, and it just weighs you down as you get older. If you can let them go, your spirit's free. You feel much better not hating people and being angry at people. So I understand that. I learned that early on, that you've got to let things go. You've got to be able to get along with people that you may not have gotten along with in earlier on. You've got to do that, or you will be so unhappy as life goes on.
Joined on the line here by Kent Shamrock, mixed martial arts legend. Moving on to a little bit of your career, obviously, Pancrase, you fought there, you fought in the UFC, you fought in Pride, to name but a few. Where was the most rewarding place you've fought, and what was your most memorable memory?
Well, there's a lot of them, and they're all way up there. But my prime was definitely in Japan. I was young, I was moving, not too many injuries, and then through through Japan, I just suffered some injuries towards the end of my career. You know, I was fighting for 2.5 years there. And so I sustained some injuries. But I would say that being the first king of Pancras, which is still the same today, I'm still the king of Pancras, the first one. That's history that can't be changed. You know, and then, of course, I got involved with the UFC. You know, I was the very first one.
Yeah.
I helped build the UFC to where it is today. I was the first super fight champion, which was the first ever single fight champion. So all the belts that people have with the single fight go through the very first fight with the super fight champion. That's history. That will never be changed. The second is being able to go into the World Wrestling Federation and being able to have things built around me. Being king of the ring, my you know, being rookie of the year, even in the MMA world and the WWF world, I was rookie of the year. Being king of the ring, tag team champion, intercontinental champion, all in a 2-year period. I accomplished that all in a 2-year period in the WWF, which probably has never been done. And they built a cage. First guy to go in there and have the Lions match in the WWF. So there are a lot of things that I've done in my career that I'm very proud of. And they all come at certain levels. I know early on, even before I got involved with MMA over in Japan, I went to 2 different wrestling organizations in North Carolina. And in my younger years, I held the belt in both of those. So almost everything that I have ever gotten involved with, I became the champion, the top.
Yeah.
Everything even in football, I became the defensive captain, most valuable player, most inspirational player. So everything that I've ever done, I've really achieved the elite level. And you know, a lot of that is, you know, God-given talent, and you know, a lot of it I earned through the toughness of being a kid, not having anybody to raise me, and then being able to turn that toughness into something positive.
Speaking of promoters there, obviously we know your relationship with Dana White. You don't really have a relationship. You've worked under Vince McMahon and guys like that in the past. Who's the most memorable, or not the most memorable, should I say, but the best promoter you've worked under? And, you know, who do you think, especially in the world of mixed martial arts?
Well, as far as promoters, I really didn't have an issue with anybody other than Dana. You know, Vince McMahon has got some issues, I think. I don't know if it's him. I don't know, because I don't know. I thought everything was good, but, you know, I don't know, because I would have liked to have gone back in there and tried to achieve capturing that belt in the WWF, or WWE now, but I don't have that opportunity. No one has reached out. I put the feelers out and let them know that I would love to come back, but no one has actually reached back. So I don't know what the reason is. Obviously, I think that I done a pretty good job in there. The fans seem to want me back, so
yeah,
I'm
definitely
not sure what the reasons are. But you know, I keep asking, but I don't receive anything. So I guess I'll never find out. But it is what it is. So, but as far as everybody else, Dana and that, I don't have issues. I think it's more or less people have issues with me. I'm strong-minded. I'm strong-willed. That's what's gotten me through life. That's what's helped me reach and achieve almost in everything I've ever done, that top level, the elite level of whatever it is I was doing. It was because of those attitudes. But maybe those don't work so well, you know, with dealing with people. I don't know.
You know, I spoke to Art Davey here on the show before, and Art was, you know, the time when the Fertittas came in with the money, and Dana was obviously their head guy. He said if Bob Merowitz or, you know, someone else had put the money behind him and Campbell McLaren, that, you know, they would have taken the promotion to the next level. How do you think, or where do you think the UFC would be now if it would have been someone like Art Davey or Campbell McLaren, you know, heading the show? Do you think it would be a very different picture to what we see now?
Well, who knows? You know, I mean, business is business. You know, there's always going to be people that are going to be angry because of the way people do business sometimes. But my problem is it seems like nowadays that everybody that comes to the end of their career, it's being disrespected, is not being let go properly, being treated with absolutely no respect. And so it's just becoming a trend that those things are happening. If you have a strong mind and strong will, which most guys do when they're able to achieve at these levels, they have to be. But then there are some of them who really don't want or don't care anymore, or just, they're just done, are okay with being puppets, saying yes or no, sir. But guys that really have their independency and strength and strong-willed, those guys don't deal well with being told that they're washed up or that they're done and being disrespected when they're being let go. They don't deal well with that. And that's what's happening, is that they need to put somebody else in place to deal with these guys when they're done. Not somebody like Dana, who has absolutely no respect towards the fighters when they're done.
And do you think it's, a case of the company guys are possibly, ruining the way fighters are getting treated these days? Because, you've guys, obviously, we can name our company guys, the list goes on. I think everyone knows who they are. There's no point to use names. But I think it's guys like this that are really setting the precedent to the way, the general, prelim fighter to the main card fighter are being treated.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it goes by how they're being treated, when they're let go. And it may not even be such a big deal if you realize that these guys were actually getting paid something. I'm not saying all of them. Some of these guys made some pretty decent money, but not what they should have made when it came to the numbers. And I looked at it like this: when you're being the face of the company, where everybody's coming to see you, that company owes you an honorable business offer, not something to where you say you make $1 million and most people go, well, that's a lot of money, you should be happy. Okay, but if somebody in another business helps build this business to what it is, even though they don't own it, and they move up the ranks and they get pay raises to a point to where they're at a place where they're making a lot of money because of what they're doing, and they sit down and negotiate every deal what they get, knowing what the numbers are, and negotiating a good price for this guy to stay because they need him, or he'll leave and go to another company. The problem is that we can't sit down and negotiate with these guys for the right amount of number because there's no other business to go to. So, therefore, these guys are taking $1 million shot when they're making 50 or 100 million on the show, and not even including the merchandise that they're selling, not including the international sales of pay-per-view. So what's the number that these guys should be making for real, considering that they're the ones building the business at that moment for the UFC? It's a partnership right now. Definitely. I am the guy that is making them money right now. They are using my name, my sweat, my blood, my tears to make money right now. Now, in a while, it won't be that way, but right now, I'm the guy they're making money with. If that's the truth, then we become a partner in this business, or I can go to another place and make more money. But the problem is that they can't go to another place to make money, so therefore they have to stay and take what they get, and it's not fair all the way down the card.
Ken, and you know more about this than I would, obviously. About, you'd see, your fights probably now on Fight Pass and, past UFC events regarding, royalties for you, etc., to have your name, on their Fight Pass product. What's the situation with that? And do you think possibly it's because earlier on in your career you were naive to the contracts you were signing, or how did that come about? Is there anything that you can do to get your name removed from the UFC?
Well, early on, when I first came back from Japan, they were having problems. I mean, they were getting ready to shut the doors. Tito Ortiz was the guy that they were, putting the company on. Unfortunately for Tito, he really didn't have anybody to be across from him to help build those pay-per-view numbers. So when I came back, I was 38 years old, 36 or 38, I don't remember which one it was, but I was definitely out of my prime when I went back over to Pride in Japan. Went to pro wrestling first. Did that for a while at WWE, then left, then went to Pride, had 3 fights over there. So I was really way out of my prime, but I came back to the UFC because the numbers were drizzled. I mean, there were 37,000 buys with Tito headlining the show, with whoever they brought in, and they just could not get the numbers. So I told Dana when he came to me, he asked me, and I finally said, okay, but I've got knee problems, and, I'll do it this time, but afterwards I'm going to have to get them fixed. So I go in there, and I told Dana, I will get the numbers. I'll break the 100,000 mark. He goes, yeah, everybody keeps saying that, but nobody does. And I said, I'm telling you, I will. I said, I've got a cross market here between mainstream audience with the WWE, WWF at the time, and over in Japan with Pride, and also with the UFC when I was there. So when I come in, the numbers were going to jump. I promise you. It only makes sense. He goes, okay. So we agreed upon something of over 99,000 buys. I would get paid extra money because he couldn't pay me what I wanted, and I made a deal with him. Well, if I do that, then I get so much over 100,000 buys. I live by what I say. He agreed to it. And so we went in and did it. And when the show was over, we blew it up. I mean, it went mainstream. It went best damn sports show. I mean, everybody wanted to do the interviews, and it went viral. And of course I was struggling with training, and I knew I was going to have a brutal time. But I knew that I could bring the UFC to where it needed to be to live and keep my legacy alive. And so I did that. And came back, and Dana told me that we did 99,000 buys. Yeah. That was my fault, because I didn't really thank a guy after that, because he was so excited. He even stood there. He said, I can't believe this. People going. He was so excited. And I said, see, I told you I could do this. I know how to do this. And he goes, man, this is just great, man. The numbers are awesome. I said, oh, great, And then after this fight was over, he came and told me, man, he was really good. We did 99,000 buys. I didn't think a guy would lie to me after doing what we did. I was standing there thinking in my mind, man, I thought we did more than that. I know the gate was unbelievable. It was a $1 million gate. And so I didn't do anything for the gate, but I knew the audience was crazy. I knew we went mainstream, and I was like, well, 50-something thousand buys more than what they were doing is a pretty good sized number, but I was disappointed. I really thought I could have broke the numbers. Well, 6 months down the road, after I'd already signed a contract for a multi-fight deal with them, which excluded, this is why I can't do anything, which excluded anything that was in the previous contract. That's what screwed me. Because at 6 months after that, I found out what the numbers were. And it was over, people tell me it was over 150,000, but we're going to go minimum of 150,000 buys. So right there is when my problem started with Dana, was because he lied to me. He straight up lied to me.
Saying that about Dana, obviously you guys don't get on well. It's well publicized. Is there any positive characteristics, in your opinion, of Dana White?
Well, when I first met Dana, he seemed like a very personal guy, just like what his mother said. His mother said Dana was a very likable person. Everybody loved him. That's the guy I knew. When I came in, he was very, very, he was a guy that could really make anybody feel at ease. And, so I felt great. I thought he was good for the business, and a great personality, dealt with people well. And then I saw this change, it was like this greed took over. And, he's just not that same guy I met. I promise you that.
And talking to Dana yet again, obviously we've seen the whole uniform. The UFC are talking about bringing in this uniform where the fighters won't be able to get their sponsors on their trunks, etc. But Dana has come out and said today, his exact words, there's no fucking deal in place to do this. If it's very much rumoured amongst the mixed martial arts media that this is going to happen, what's your opinion on this? Is this just another way of devaluing the marketability and the financial ambitions of mixed martial artists?
Well, Dana threw that out there, and he was hoping he wouldn't get so much flack for it, because it is. The thought process was to be able to control fighters more. And now that there's a huge outcry on that, he doesn't want to give any more footing to what we have said, which is it's too late. I mean, I think most people realize what's going on. This guy got caught up into a whirlwind, and he doesn't know who he is anymore. And the people that are closest to him don't know who he is anymore.
Do you think
he doesn't know who he is anymore?
Do you think Dana's delusional?
I do. I think you see spots of it where you're like, did he just say that? And I think most people stand back and look and think, did he just say that? I really believe that he's getting the Mike Tyson syndrome. And, you know what happens when that happens. The strongest people in the world today are fans. They are the strongest entity in anything in the world that we have going, because all they have to do is say, we've had enough, and it's over.
Is there any sort of regret now, the way you've seen the UFC progress onto a mainstream level? Is there any regret that you ever actually fought within the UFC to be associated with them now, because you intensely hate, I think it's fair to say, what Dana White has done with the company?
When I first came back, I was out of my prime. I had injuries. I had screws in my neck. I was out of my prime, but I thought that I could go in there, and I thought I could still win. There's no question. I figured I could find a way to win. I've always been able to do that, but you don't realize, when you get older and stuff like that you're just not that same person anymore. It takes you a while to figure it out. But I thought I could get fixed, to get surgeries, and continue to keep going. So I did the fight with Tito, and by all means, I was not where I should have been, but I still thought I could win. And it didn't turn out that way. But the reason why I did it, the reason why I came back to the UFC, was because Dana White asked me to. He asked me to come back. And so I did. And I told him I could do these numbers, and I did. And I got punched in the nuts, literally punched in the nuts. Can't breathe because of what they did to me. And and for me, I can let that go. I didn't do anything about it. That's on me. And I have absolutely nowhere to complain. And that's what I keep trying to tell these fans when they say, why are you guys in crying and spilt over milk, and you should have saved your money, you should have done this. You know what? I accept the responsibility of what happened to me. This isn't about me. This is about moving forward and trying to fix what's happening, because there are going to be more people like me, and I would hate to see that.
Yeah, and we've seen more recently, obviously, we know that GSP has sort of, halted his career a little bit and taken an indefinite time of absence. And he criticised the UFC for a numerous amount of things after that. Do you think fighters are, taking a stand now possibly against the UFC? And is it something you'd like to see more fighters, possibly do? Obviously, we've learned in the last week that Gilbert Melendez might be on his way to Bellator, probably the best, I think it's fair to say, the uncrowned UFC lightweight champion. Would you like Gil to go to Bellator to sort of make a statement to see the UFC, they don't have it all their own way? Because I think generally conceived amongst the mixed martial arts media that, Gil is probably the best lightweight in the world.
Well, I would say this. I would say that it would be nice to see guys, take a stand. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen right at this point, just because there's really nowhere to go for them to make the money that they would make at the UFC. So I understand where they're at. I really do. It would be nice to be able to see everybody stand together and not one individual have to make that decision, because then at that point, UFC has no choice but to listen. Or Dana White might jump up and down and say, effing this and effing that. If you effing fighters go there, you effing fighters do this, and you effing fighters do that, I will effing shut this company down.
Just a few more questions before we wrap it up, and I really do appreciate the time, Ken. Do you admire any of the guys, or do you dislike some of the characters, like, company guys? Like, do you think these guys are good for the sport, or, are they potentially ruining the future of mixed martial arts?
It's not their issue. I mean, most people say,
but do you think they should possibly stand up and make an issue, because there's no one seems to be standing up and doing it that's actually an active fighter within the promotion at the moment?
Well, let me tell you this. If I was in their position, I would have a hard time standing up unless I knew the rest of them would stand up. Is
Gilbert Melendez not doing that at the moment, though, to a certain extent?
Gilbert Melendez has got an opportunity to go somewhere else and make more money. Yeah. John Jones don't have that opportunity. He's getting paid pretty good right now. Not what he should be making, as opposed to what he's bringing in. He's not even getting paid 1% of what he's bringing in for them. And that's my point. Is that he ain't going to make that kind of money. Now, Dana makes it really clear A lot of these guys will not make that kind of money anywhere else. But at the same time, if you look at the numbers that they're bringing in, they're getting raped.
Just another issue that's, it's on the horizon in mixed martial arts the whole time at the moment is testosterone replacement therapy. And we've recently heard you speak out, admitting that you used steroid in the past, not going into a fight. Do you think it's, a change of the times, the fact guys are, obviously using the TRT now? Was it steroids very much back in the day? Is there a similar sort of pattern the way things have gone, but with different substances, obviously?
Well, it is. It's just like boxing. When you look at boxing, there's so many ways for you to hide the drug testing, especially when they come out. This is what really makes it funny, because they come out and announce when they're going to test you. And it's almost like you think that and most people are ignorant to it, but do you understand what they're doing? They're saying, I'm going to test you. We're going to test you at this time. And we're going to test for steroids before the fight, just before the fight when you're in the locker room. And then we're going to test for any other substances like pot, painkillers, anything after you come out of the ring. I mean, they basically give you a time and date and schedule when they're going to do it. I think any mastermind would be able to figure out a way to cheat.
Yeah.
Instead of, doing it the way if they were serious about cleaning it up, you would do blood tests. And if guys couldn't stand needles, which most of them will all of a sudden come up with ways of saying, well, I don't want to get stuck with a needle. Then you do random pee testing throughout the training time. Anytime they come in, right then on the spot, they walk in the door. You may be in the ring right at that time. You got to stop right then and there. They walk in the bathroom, they do a pee test. They could do that 2 or 3 times during that. If they really were serious about cleaning it up. Problem is that they're just looking at ways to make money. I mean, if you look at the way they test all the guys that are in the main event, or no matter where they're at on the card, the guy that's making the most money, they'll test him. Because they figure if they can get one of these guys that are doing this, which is, pretty dumb anyways, because if guys have a lot of money, they have ways of cheating. They figure out ways of cheating. So it doesn't make any sense to me. It's a ridiculous system. A lot of guys who had actually tested positive, you look at it and go, really? Like Horace Gracie. Yeah. When you've got other big monsters on the show that you look at it and you go, yeah, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but you look at it and you go, well, they look like they are. And you look at Horace Gracie and he testified, you're like, really? That's your system?
And Ken, when you were taking the steroids, I know you admitted there recently that you did. Was it, 6 months before a fight, before you even got into camp? The way guys, use the TRT at the moment, they use it obviously a good bit beforehand and get their levels down. Was it a case of adjusting? And was it in sort of preparation for training before the fight that you would you juice up on this?
Well, I didn't get involved with steroids. Growth hormones was what I used because basically when you get older, your hormones go down, your testosterone level go down, so you use the hormonal things to put it back up to normal levels. And in the new UFC, when the Fertittas took over and they started drug testing, and you could see the change in my body. When I fought Tito the first time, I was 200 pounds, I was 198 pounds, 200 pounds. And throughout the whole UFC, I never weighed over 207 pounds. Prior to that, you could see my body's changed from Japan fighting where I weighed 205 pounds, sometimes 217. In the UFC, I was 217, sometimes 220. Yeah. But I never, ever stepped in the ring on roids, ever. So, there are ways to get around this. And that's the thing, is it's so stupid with what they're trying to do. They know it, too. They know it.
Do you think, obviously, it's well documented as well, a lot of guys come out and said like 90% of guys even now at the moment.
I want to say something before that, after that question too, is that I don't have a problem with people using hormones because I think, personally in my opinion, I think that you can go to a doctor and you can get amounts of hormones put in your body that is healthy for your body. And it helps recovery, it helps your body get stronger and recover faster. Steroids, I think, they're bad because they don't have anything to really do with sports and longevity for life. But hormone medicines do. And I think that they're making it more dangerous by not letting these guys be able to go to a doctor, get on some medicine, hormonal medicines that will bring their levels up for a man at a normal level, or maybe a little above a normal level, where they, like how they test right now, where they test for normal levels. They could do the same thing. They can't be on it unless they're under a doctor's care. And if they are on it, then the doctors need to test them and be able to give them levels of where they're at before they fight so that they can go in there at a normal level. To me, it takes away the danger of what we have today, where guys are getting it on the black market, they're taking whatever they can, and then they're getting themselves into a problem where they're depressed. You see them shrunk up and look sick after they're done. If they would just do this thing right and say, you know what, these guys are like an Indy race car. They're driving hard, not like a street car. So they need high octane fuel, and they need to change the parts of the engine every race. They need to change it because they don't want anything to blow up. So I look at the fighters the same way, as they're running hard every day. Their bodies are pushed to the highest limit, and they're asked to do this every day to stay in shape. And then when fight time comes around, they're asked to go to another level.
Yeah.
Well, in order for you to be able to continue to do this for a long period of time, you need, like hormonal medicines, to be able to keep your body to be able to recover hard every day, to be able to perform at a high level. But at the same time, you could test those levels being under a doctor's care to make sure that you're not at a high level to where it could be dangerous for you. This way, you're not getting the fighters, because they're going to use it. If there's a way to cheat, they'll find a way to use it. And I say, open the doors, let it be legalized. If they're going to legalize pot, for God's sake, which I think is a lot worse for you than hormonal medicine, the hormone medicine that you use, not hormonal medicine for men, like growth hormone, testosterone, those type of things that boost your normal levels up to somewhere where you're 22. But you're not at a dangerous level where you're going to hurt yourself, and that is where the doctors come in, being under a doctor's care. Doctors will not lie about what they're doing for their athletes, because they will lose their license, because at any moment they could test these guys and find out whether their levels are where the doctor says they are or aren't. And if they're not, doctors would lose their license.
Well, are the promotions doing enough to regulate this, or is it the governing state bodies? Should there be more done by both sides? Get this out of the sport, or to just regulate it to some degree?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that you've got two ways to go. Either one, you make an effort to stop it, and you make that you don't, throw sugar on it and catch somebody every now and then and say you're doing your job, because that's ridiculous. Of course. And then they catch guys that don't know how to use it, like Hoist Gracie, who doesn't know how to hide it. It has to do it because Sakuraba, changes his blood and, whatever it is that the medical people do for him. And he comes in and he's fighting a guy who's at a normal level and he beats him. But Hoist Gracie says, okay, well, I'm going to even the playing field. And he goes in and then he beats Sakuraba. Well, then he comes up, because he doesn't know how to cheat, and he comes up positive. Well, you got some guys on there that's 250 pounds, cut down to 220 and shredded. And you're going, okay, he got caught and he didn't. There's a difference of guys who know how to cheat and guys that don't know how to cheat.
What's your, just before we wrap it, I'm sorry if keeping you way over time here, Ken. Obviously, guys, there's a lot of, we know about Vitor Belfort's past. How do you perceive guys like this, fighting up against, other guys that have, completely clean records? Do you believe these guys should be regulated in these states, and do you believe they should be given the opportunity to fight for world titles after, testing positive for steroids in the past?
Well, listen, in my opinion, I think that the testing is a joke, okay? And I think that you ask any fighter, they'll tell you the same thing. The thing I don't like is when other fighters point out that somebody else is using, and then you look at them and go, really?
Yeah.
Nobody's telling the truth. So many people are lying about what they're doing, and the ones that usually are the ones that are pointing fingers at other people because they lost.
Yeah.
So it's really, everybody's using something. Just like some people want to smoke pot because it helps them relax after training or before training or calm the nerves or whatever it is. That's also a way to gain an advantage. I don't care what anybody says. It is. It's like, when Babe Ruth used to get drunk all the time and he would go to the baseball park and hit home runs. Take the beer away, could he do the same thing? If not, it's an advantage.
Do you believe mixed martial arts is completely, riddled with steroids at the moment?
Well, like I said, I think there are some good athletes out there, but I'm saying that there's a very, very high percentage of people using it and lying about it.
Is there current?
If you're not using, you should have enough confidence in yourself to go in there and do your job. And if by chance someone does beat you and he looks like it's on, the more that you raise about somebody being on, the more it doesn't look right. Even though I understand, what you're going through, for God's sakes, I know, because I went in and fought, and I was 200 pounds, 202 pounds, and 205 pounds, and I was getting beat by guys that were walking in after weighing at 205 at 220, 230 pounds. So I understand, but you don't say anything because you can't prove it.
Do you believe there's current world champions using performance-enhancing drugs at the moment?
I would believe so, but again, like I said, it's the same thing. I believe there's a high percentage of people using it. People are lying about it, which, if they do tell, obviously they're going to lose their title or they're going to lose their place in MMA. So, it's like, do or don't you tell? And so like I said, that's on them. My conscience is clear, but it's on them on what they need to do. But I would say there's a very high percentage of that, and I think it has to go back to the thought process of guys who are going in there and they're realizing that if they don't, they're not going to get an opportunity to win. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you go in there and you stay, clean and you've got great talent, and you go in there against somebody that isn't, and he beats you in a decision, and okay, well, if it was fair and fair, I would have submitted him.
Yeah.
Because they were on, it's not fair. But so then they go and say, you know what, I'm going to fix that problem. So they go out there and they figure out how to use and how to cheat, and they go on, and then they go in there and they destroy everybody, and and they're like, yeah, see, now look, but they can't say anything and they got to lie about it. So I understand the process of why it's getting so spotted in there was because people are constantly going up against people that are using. They know it in their own minds, and they are not, and they get beat. They haven't even made it up the ranks yet, and they're getting beat. So they say, well, if I'm going to make it in this sport, I've got to go on. And so you see my point? It's like, if you want to make it in MMA, you need to rethink where you're going and how you're doing it.
Definitely.
Unless they fix it.
That's the real point. It really does need to be sorted out on a global level. Just a couple of quick fire questions before we wrap it up. How is everything going with the bodyguards, the ProTech Global Service? How's that been working out for you, Ken?
It's going great, man. I've been opportunity to get a lot of celebrity clients, and it's been a great run for me. So hopefully it'll keep going.
Definitely. And what does 2014 hold for Ken Shamrock? What are we going to see Ken Shamrock involve himself in this year?
Well, we got a couple of reality shows that we've been working on for a while now, so they're starting to pan out. Like I said, there's still a long ways to go. We got to get through selling it and seeing different stations if they want to pick it up and stuff like that. So we're in the process of doing that. I also got a sports drink out called Shamrock Slam.
Brilliant.
If you want to go and find out how to order it, it's called shamrockslam.com. It'll give you all the information you need on there. Also, too, I have a online self-defense classes that you can take, and it's profit101.com, profit101.com. You can go on there and check out the online self-defense classes. And the big thing is I really put my Twitter up. It's at Shamrock10.
Yeah, you're I've noticed you're very active on the Twitter to responding to your fans as well.
Yeah, I do. So anybody wants to go on there, I'm on there every day. Come on and chat with us. It's at Shamrock10. I'd love to hear from you guys. But anyways, I appreciate you having me on.
Brilliant. I really do appreciate the time. And just one more question for you.
What's that?
Any other words to your good friend and pal Dana White? Anything else you'd like to get off your chest about Dana?
Well, like I said, I have nothing with Dana or the Cicadas. It has to do with the way these fighters are making money.
Yeah.
And I've said this over and over again. If I'm wrong and the monies aren't being made like I think they're being made, then prove me wrong, and I will go on TV anywhere you want me to and apologize for being wrong. But if not, we need to fix it. That's it. There's no anger, no hurt, no. I have no hard feelings towards any of them, even already what they've done. That was my thing. I didn't fix it. That's my business, my problem. But moving forward, I would love to see these guys be able to, after they're done for three to however long years they've got in there, that they walk away with something, enough for them to feel pretty comfortable.
Brilliant stuff, Ken. I'm really sorry about keeping you way over time here. And listen, I really do appreciate the time and you coming on the show, and I'd love to do it again sometime in the future.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.